I have one additional item, Mr. Chair, at the end of the meeting that I'd like to bring forward.
Under?
It has to do with the recent agreement signed by the county with the golf course.
Then I'm going to put it under other business.
Yes, correct. That's what I request.
Anyone else with an addition? Seeing nothing else, seeking approval of the agenda. Moved by Mayor Ray, second by Member Pierce. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Anyone with a pecuniary interest, please do so at the appropriate time. There are no delegations, petitions, or presentation listed. Seeking adoption of the previous minutes. Moved by Member Coleman, second by Member Miller. Questions or concerns? All in favor? Opposed? They're carried. Anyone have any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on to 7A, public hearings under the Planning Act to receive information. And the first one, 7A, is Lauren Bruder, 373 Maple Ave South, ZBA 9-18-RA. And I'll ask our planner to present. Rajika, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. An application has been received from Diane Morrison on 373 Maple Avenue South. The lands are located on the south part of Burford, south of King Street. It's formerly Rumble Funeral Home, and it's about 1.21 acres. That's the location of the property. Showing the existing building on the property as well. Currently, the lands are designated as urban residential. They are located within the suburban, secondary urban settlement area of Burford, and which allows for small-scale commercial uses, personal service shops, businesses, and offices that support the residential neighborhood. The current zoning on the property is site-specific SR-1, which allows for additional dwelling units, contractor's business, and service offices related to the contractor's business. The applicant is proposing to amend the provisions of the current zoning to allow for additional commercial uses within the existing building. They want to remove the contractor's yard as a permitted use, but request a business professional office, a personal service establishment, a studio, and restricted medical offices be permitted within the existing 446 square meters of the area in the building. The key issues that staff will be working with the applicant to resolve would be compatibility with the surrounding land uses. It's a small-scale neighborhood-type commercial uses that have been requested. Whether there's enough parking, is that create any issues with traffic? So those things will be addressed through this application as well. This application has been circulated to departments and agencies for comments. It also has been circulated to the public. No comments have been received so far, and a recommendation report will be presented in future once all the comments will be received and compiled by staff. That concludes my comments. Any questions?
Any member of committee have a question of our planner? Seeing none. So the applicant or the representative of the applicant here would like to present. I'll get to you.
Sorry, I don't understand how these meetings work, but I'm just wondering if I live right across the street and I want.
I will get to you, ma'am. Is the applicant or representative of the applicant here?
I'm not quite sure how this works, but yeah, we just wanted, we're currently only zoned for one office, one business office.
I will help you. First of
Okay.
all, state your name and address.
Diane Morrison, 373 Maple Ave South in Burford.
Okay, now make your presentation,
Okay.
and we'll help you if you need help.
Okay, we're currently only zoned for one service office in the commercial area of the building. We are going to be residing on the main level of the building, as well as one rental apartment in the upstairs. The commercial zone portion of the building has 6 offices in it currently, and we're just looking to rezone so we could rent out individual offices to small, it's like a chiropractor, insurance agent. We've had some interest, people looking for satellite office space in Burford, so just to be able to rent out individual offices.
Is that it?
It is.
Any member of committee have a question of the applicant? Member Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Diane. Diane, quick question there. Do you actually have tenants lined up, or is this just to rezone it in the hopes of attracting?
We've had some inquiries. Obviously, I don't have anything lined up because I don't know. We're going through the whole process right now just to make sure that we are able to do that, so.
Okay, so then I guess my question would be, second question would be, as far as the uses requested, you're seeing something along those lines?
Yeah, just small, like we're going to be living on the main portion of the building, on the other side, so
Okay.
nothing high traffic, not retail, just small service offices.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Keep yourself available. I may call you back if there's questions from the audience that you may come back and may be able to answer for them.
Okay.
Thank you. Before I go any further, there's a sign-up sheet on the back desk immediate to my left of the door where you come in. If anyone would like further information on anything that happens tonight, please sign up on that sign-up sheet and you will be contacted. Now I will open this portion to any member of the public who would like to speak to this application. Please come forward, state your name and address, and proceed with your presentation.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Dorsey. I live at 376 Maple Ave South. We actually live directly across the street from the property. So we do have concerns with this. There's a lot of small children on that street. We are afraid that it will increase traffic. There is no parking. So if there ends up being more offices, more traffic through that building, that is a massive size building. You could put quite a few offices in there. My concern is for my children, for the neighbors' children, and it's already a busy intersection. It wasn't really busy when it was Rumble's funeral home because it was quite slow, but when it was, the streets were lined. Obviously, there was hundreds of people there at certain times, but we're just concerned about the safety of our children, the parking issues, and it's not something that we want to see go through. Thank you.
Is there any other member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? Don't be shy. I might look like the devil, but I'm not. I'll ask a second time. Is there any other member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? I'll ask you third and final time. Is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? Would the applicant like to come back and answer that question or let staff handle it?
From the property, the parking area that we have there is a large parking lot. There is ample parking for over 25 cars. The parking lot will be lined for the parking, and we are requesting for service offices that would only have 1 or 2 clients at a time, so there wouldn't be a large amount of traffic in and out. That's not what we're looking to do because, as well, we're going to be living there, so we're not looking for any kind of high traffic business going in there. But we do have ample parking, and we have worked with Rushika on that.
No decision made this evening on this application. We will receive information. Staff will be dealing with the applicant, and this will come forward at a later date for a decision. How does committee wish to deal with this application? Member Coleman. Seeking a second by Member Pierce. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Moving on to 7B, Riverview Highlands, 7072 Beverly Street West, PS 1-18-RA, and ZBA 5-18-RA. And I'll ask our planner to present. Rashika?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. A plan of subdivision application and a zoning bylaw amendment application has been received for 7072 Beverly Street West in St. George. As depicted in the picture, the lands are located south of Beverly Street. Also shown are the other subdivision applications that have been in process and submitted within St. George. The lands are about 9 hectares. There are natural features on the property. Some of the existing buildings at the front of on Beverly Street have been demolished as well. Currently, they're designated urban residential and natural heritage system, which allows for a wide variety of residential uses, from singles and semis to townhouse development to multi-use and mixed-use development as well. The lands are currently zoned R2 with a portion of the farm piece, which is currently zoned agricultural and natural heritage. The applicant is proposing a draft plan of subdivision for about 35 single detached lots. There will be a multiple residential block, which has been depicted for adult lifestyle community, and a block for neighborhood commercial, or there will be a dual zoning requested, will be for either neighborhood commercial or single detached residentials, along with a future development block and open spaces. The zoning bylaw amendment is also being requested to describe all the uses as stated above. So here's how the draft plan has been proposed. The Street A, which is shown, is going to be connected to east of the subject lands, which is the Losani subdivision. Losani subdivision is actually surrounded all 3 sides of the subject lands, so there will be a connectivity from a Street A along with the open space block. The future development block, Block 39, is going to be developed once the Losani plan is kind of advanced through that area. The key issues that have been identified so far are the Class A for both water and wastewater in St. George are ongoing, and at this time they haven't been completed yet. As well as the St. George official plan amendment that was approved by council that laid the policy framework for development in St. George. It has been appealed to the local planning appeal tribunal, and no dates have been set for the hearings as such. Furthermore, like the stormwater management for these lands, they are dependent on Losani lands to the east and south. Losani, as we know, has also appealed their applications to LPAT. The pre-hearing for that development is tomorrow morning. So there's a lot of depending factors with this plan of subdivision, along with like blocks 39, which is a future development block as shown on the draft plan, and block 40 will be landlocked until they are merged. They are to be developed along with Losani development. In addition to those, there are concerns from like water balance, stormwater management, floodplain, and slope analysis that have been identified by Grand River Conservation Authority. Staff is still reviewing the application. Most of the comments have been received. We're still waiting on the engineering comments on these applications. The timing of approval of these applications will be critical, as they're dependent on both Class A and OPA for policy framework. So we have communicated this to the applicant that we will be keeping these applications not on hold, but we will wait to see where the Class A process goes in the next couple months, and then decide whether to move forward with a recommendation report at that time or not. Again, as I mentioned, so we will wait to see that how both the processes, the Class EA as well as the decisions on the OPA are made, and then a report with a staff recommendation will be brought forward. There have been few neighbor concerns that were received that have been attached to the addendum. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Any member of committee with a question of our planner? Seeing none? Thank you, Rajika. Is the applicant or an agent of the applicant here would like to present? Please come forward, state your name and address. If you folks are wondering why I'm not looking at the screen, I have a beautiful screen down below right in front of me.
I don't have a point. That's okay.
Please proceed when you're ready.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair. My name is Brenda Case. I'm from GSP Group, and I represent the owner this evening. Okay, I'm going to try and slip through the slides that have already been presented by Rashika. First of all, you'll notice that the frontage is incorrect. It doesn't include the second property we had purchased. The area is 8.8 hectares, and the property slopes in a southeasterly direction from the northwest corner down to the southeast corner, and you can see the tributary of Fairchild Creek at the bottom there. We are part of an overall conceptual phasing plan, which is being dealt with through the official plan amendment for St. George, as well as the municipal Class EA process. You'll see there the area outlined in yellow is our subdivision that we're proposing, and we're part of the Phase 1B and Phase 2 lands. In terms of the landowners group, a landowners group has been formed, and the owners, Pine Vest Homes, are one of the owners, are one of the members of the group. We have signed a memorandum of understanding that sets out the principles of the cost sharing to service the new development in St. George, but we're still working out the details throughout the process. As Rashika was saying, a municipal class environmental assessment is underway to deal with the water and sanitary sewers. And again, this is repeating what Rashika has said. The St. George official plan amendment has been appealed to the local planning appeals tribunal, and the EA is contingent upon, the servicing is contingent upon the EA process. So we still have a ways to go, and we are working with municipal staff throughout this process. In terms of the proposed draft plan, we're looking at in the northwest corner of the property, the diagram's been flipped on its side for space purposes. That's the only reason why. We're looking at a dual zoning on it to provide either neighborhood commercial uses or singles that would just be along the west side of the road there. In addition, we're looking at an overall 35 single detached dwellings in this subdivision, as well as approximately 25 townhouses in an adult block-type townhouse development. In addition, we have a large green, what I've identified as the green space area where no development is permitted. That's the natural heritage system that the official plan has already identified, and we're not looking at anything in that area. The area down at the very southern corner, at the very bottom, is for future development in coordination with Lausanne's draft plan of subdivision. So that area, we're looking for a holding provision subject to the merging it in title with the Lausanne properties. We're also looking at eventually a trail or a walkway connection from the subdivision into that green area. The details of that haven't been determined, but we have identified an area where we think that would be appropriate. In terms of planning applications, we're looking for a zoning bylaw amendment to permit exactly what I've shown you in the slide before, as well as a plan of subdivision, which would outline the establishment of the roads and the blocks and the various lots. Next, we've completed, as a part of the formal consultation process, or the pre-consultation process, a number of studies are required. What you see in front of you are the studies that have been completed and were submitted with the application, and staff are currently reviewing them. The official plan designation is urban residential. We're part of the primary urban settlement area of St. George. It's hard to tell, but there's a line that goes over a much broader area. We're also part of the very front portion that fronts Beverly Street is within the built boundary, and that encompasses formerly 70 and 72, or 70, I believe it is, Beverly Street. That green area along the bottom is natural heritage, and that's the area we're not talking about. It was shown in green in the slide before. So the type of uses that are proposed are permitted pursuant to the official plan. An official plan amendment isn't required, obviously subject to the servicing coming into effect. From a zoning perspective, the site is currently zoned singles, singles and semis, agricultural and natural heritage. We're looking to rezone the lands to provide for the subdivision that you've just seen. So to permit the singles, to permit the block townhouse development, and to allow for the future development of that block down at the southern corner, as well as dual zoning at the northwest corner for the neighborhood / residential property or block. So there are a number of issues that we're looking at, and the first is obviously and always is compatibility with adjacent landowners. So in this case, we have single detached dwellings that abut the property to the north and to the west. We also have the conservation of the natural heritage features to the south, which is the Fairchild Creek and the system that goes with that. In addition, the timing of municipal services, that's the Class EA process I was referring to. And finally, future development blocks, which would be through a holding provision. So I want to talk a little bit about the adjacent development and how we hope to deal with some of those issues. So the houses that you see there are just some of the groupings of houses that on the south side of Beverly Street that back onto the proposed development. And some of this will be dealt with through zoning, other aspects will be dealt with through the draft plan of subdivision and conditions process. First and foremost, fencing will be provided along the rear property line of all those single detached dwellings on the south side of Beverly Street that abut the property. From a building form perspective, we're looking at roughly a two-story house, two-story height. The setbacks are that we're looking at for standard setbacks. We're not going for site specifics on the setbacks. So we're hoping that in that way we can provide for a good interface between the two, between residential back to back, so singles backing onto singles. I think one of the key issues is clearly to be dealt with is the house that is right next door. So 68 Beverly Street abuts, is on the east side of the property. It abuts the eastern boundary close to Beverly Street. And we have received some correspondence from them, and that's in your package. And some of the issues, there's a number of issues that are identified in them. Some of them deal with, you'll recall from the subdivision that there's going to be a road coming in adjacent to this single detached dwelling. So the residents are concerned about, they want to ensure that a sidewalk isn't placed immediately adjacent to their property. They have concerns with the mouth of the roadway, the new road that's being constructed. We're going to have to deal with how that interfaces with the existing driveway that's right there that you can see on the right side. As well as there are some trees along there and some agreements that were made with the property, with the owner and the adjacent property owner that haven't been fulfilled yet, but we do plan on doing that. So we very much want to sit down and speak to them about these issues. There have been concerns expressed about the zoning on Block 37, not overly excited about the commercial aspect, and that's something we're going to continue to work with staff on to see what the best type of use would be at that corner block. So just to give you an overall idea, so the municipal addresses are illustrated there. So where the red circles are, that's where fencing is going to be provided, and that's obviously where we have to be sure that the interface works well. Along number 74 at the bottom, the property owner there has expressed their concerns regarding some construction materials that have been piled up. And they're basically, my understanding is they're sort of at the back of adjacent to the back corner of his property, which I think is around, if you can see, lots 3 and 4. In that area generally. So we definitely want to speak to the property owner and discuss how we're going to be dealing with that fill. We're very much aware of it, and it's our intent to deal with that head on. From natural heritage perspective, we do have our natural heritage expert here this evening, Elaine Gosnell from Natural Resource Solutions, NRSI. And what we're identifying here, it's not that easy for you to see, but we've got three specific buffers that we're providing and we're proposing, and the Grand River Conservation Authority is reviewing. The first one is the wetland boundary, and that is the dashed green line that you can see there, and we're proposing a 15-meter buffer from that. There's a valley slope, which I think it's a little hard for you to see the pink line. We're proposing a 6-meter setback from that, and there's another solid green line, and that's the drip line. We're proposing 6 meters from that. So I think if anybody has concerns with how that is set up, we can maybe have you look at an actual close-up map, and we can have those discussions. But at this point, the Conservation Authority is reviewing it as well as staff, and we'll be discussing and dealing with their issues. In terms of servicing, this plan is just a high-level plan that shows you how the servicing of this overall area is being proposed at a very high level. And it just gives you an idea of where areas that they're going to have cost sharing versus specific areas where individual developers would pay for the servicing extension down to the ultimate outlet in the southeast corner. Oh, sorry, that's where our property is in relation to that overall plan. So we recognize that in terms of that future development block down in the south corner, that we're going to need a holding provision on that, and it would obviously need to be subject to amalgamation with the Lozani lands to the south. So we have no way of accessing it through the property. We'd have to go over the creek, which we have no intention on doing. And obviously, everything's subject to the overall servicing and the final approval of official plan amendment related to St. George. So other than that, I've zipped through that relatively quickly. I'd be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Any member of committee with a question of the applicant? Member Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Brenda. Okay, I was going to ask about the debris. You did kind of touch on it. We're going to tackle it head on, so if
Absolutely.
you guys could make that homeowner happy, I would be happy. My question is, given all the natural features on this, one of your studies, on one of your earlier slides, you said you're going to have a scoped environmental impact study. Why do you use that word scoped? Is it different from a regular environmental impact study?
As a part of the pre-consultation process, they identify whether a full-blown EIS is required or whether it's scope, which would limit it to certain aspects that are required at that point in time. So the Grand River Conservation Authority is the one that usually determines that, and they decide what they want to know, what information they need. So if you'd like more specifics on what was included, I can ask Elaine to clarify that for you.
Yeah, I'll be okay, thank you.
Any other member of committee with a question of the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. I may call
Thank
you
you.
back up to address some concerns.
Thank you.
Is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? Please come forward, sir. State your name and address.
Hello, my name is Paul Johnston. I live at 74 Beverly Street West, right beside the property in question. Can we go back a slide or two to show that layout?
Rajika will help you.
That'd be fantastic, thank you. I'm not sure if, just one that had the proposed. That one right there.
That one's mine.
Yeah, perfect. So the number 74 is pretty much our lot. So we are right beside this commercial, what do you call it, personal, commercial area. I don't know if the lady that just spoke moments ago actually read the letter that we submitted, but that is our main concern, is this commercial property right beside our home. It's a nice size property right now, nice country view, and we're concerned that we're going to be looking at the back end of a strip mall, dumpsters possibly. The debris pile that she played off so well is a 10-foot tall pile of concrete cinder blocks, probably about 30 feet long, and that's what I see when I walk out my front door. It's this big pile of debris. Pardon me. My big concern is that's going to be the standard for construction in this area. There are people living there right now. I'd like to make sure that they show some consideration to us in our neighborhood. I guess that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to comment on this application? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Hello, I'm Dave Brandon. I'm at the other side, 68 Beverly Street, with the What we're sort of worried about is I'm looking at probably about a foot, foot and a half from my driveway that runs good 80 feet down the side of that to a sidewalk. I mean, it is a nice small town, but I don't want to open up my truck and kick somebody in the sidewalk walking down it. So I'm worried about kind of losing some privacy because, you know, our main doors, we drive down that road, come in our back entrance. So I'm looking at 6 feet to, you know, the whole distance there with basically a sidewalk, and my driveway is about 2 feet away from the property line. So, I mean, it's probably 5 feet away. It's going to be me trying to reverse out to come out in an intersection. I'm assuming down the road there might be a traffic light there, but, you know, I know there's going to be a fence down there. Then I'm sort of looking at the Great Wall of China. I'm going to be driving right down with a fence, a wood fence probably, with only about 6 or 8 feet of my driveway. And the trees that we have are pretty old trees, so I mean, I'm pretty sure they're going to be damaged enough from the building, and they're going to have to be cut up because they probably do hang out the back end. Tree hangs out a good 30, 40 feet over the property. It'll be like middle of the road. So I'm worried about if you do a lot of construction there, it will damage roots, and I'll end up losing the trees at that end, and that's kind of, you know, my privacy at the backyard with 3 big trees. How would we put a fence down there and be like, you know, chop, 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 or we just lose, you know, all my trees? That's kind of a few of my concerns there, because, you know, we are people that sit out in the back a lot and enjoy, you know, looking at that. And my barn is, which is a garage, is probably 2 feet away from the property line, which is going to be somebody walking down and going like this across the barn, or a fence that runs right up there. I guess that's basically my main concerns, just kind of condensing them. Okay.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the audience who would like to comment on this application? Please come forward, state your name and address.
I'm Glenda Johnston. I live at 74 Beverly Street West. Thank you for the respect you've paid to my neighbors to the east by offering them a fence. I certainly would like to see a fence as I do back onto, as you've indicated, lots 3 and 4, 1 through 4 on that side. It certainly is a beautiful property that we own. We have a gorgeous view. We have a 1.3 acre lot that is absolutely heaven back there, and certainly don't want to see that disrupted. There are some beautiful trees that are in that habitat in the back, and I appreciate that you've offered some respect to that property, but certainly there's some beautiful old oak trees that are extremely old. So just like to see some respect to that. Certainly on the commercial zoning portion on the front of it, have a lot of concern for that. We've got a lot of property in St. George that currently has commercial zoning. The property down by the strip plaza down that occupies Tito's Pizzeria and a vacant variety store and 2 other units that are currently vacant. So there's certainly lots of opportunity for commercial in St. George. I don't think that we need to go adding some in an area that really doesn't necessarily have the housing to perhaps support that. There are also 2 parcels of land that are currently for sale on Main Street that are directly across the street from that plaza, and those, according to the listing, are zoned as commercial as well. So I think there's lots of opportunities to kind of keep the residential separate from the commercial. So those are my concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the audience like to speak to this application? I'll ask a second time. Is there any other member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? Don't be shy. I'll ask a third and final time. Is there any other member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? Seeing no one, I'll ask if the applicant would like to come back and address any of the concerns that you might have heard from the previous neighbors. You don't have to at this point in time, but if you'd like to, you have that opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We definitely want to meet with the residents that have sent in the letters, and Rob will likely be in contact with you before the end of the week. We definitely want to address your concerns, and we want to be respectful of your properties as well. It's not our intent to ignore any of your issues at all. We are sincere about it, and the developer is a is a solid developer in the community. So I think that's it for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How does the committee wish to deal with this application? Member Miller,
Move to receive.
seeking a seconder, seconded by Member Simons. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. This application will come back for approval at a future date. I do not anticipate it coming back within the first month or two. But if you sign the sheet at the back, you'll be kept up to date. Thank you. Moving on to C, Lauderdale Developments Incorporated, north of Willowdale Street and west of Greens Road, PS 2-13-MD, combined with ZBA 6-13-MD. And I'll ask our planner to proceed. Hopefully, he does a little bit better than playing summer hockey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, the next three applications that we're dealing with are all situated within the airport area of the county. This application is situated right at the end of Willowdale and Dalewood, as number 3 on the slide above. The site is approximately 20 acres and is pretty irregularly shaped. They are situated within the suburban residential and employment areas. The lands that are subject to these applications are designated as suburban residential in the official plan. The intent of that is for predominantly low-density residential. Presently, the site is zoned agricultural in our zoning bylaw, and the intent of these applications are to rezone the portion of the lands presently zoned for agriculture to suburban residential for draft approval of a residential plan of subdivision for 35 units, consisting of single-family dwellings. This is the proposed plan of subdivision. It's a cul-de-sac there are 2 cul-de-sacs with a crescent design. Situated to the east is St. Teresa's School. The key issue, actually, with all of the 3 applications that are in front of us in the airport is essentially the timing for water is one of the major issues, and it's the establishment of our elevated tank that's happening out in the airport area. The EA process has been completed for that area. We have completed the detailed design, and basically we're looking to send that out for tender. So the timing of the creation of any lots would be concurrent with the finalization of that water tower. And so we're bringing these back in front of committee in hopes of kind of keeping these going and getting concurrent approvals so that once the water tower is completed, we can start development out in the airport. Other issues with this development, there were concerns raised by adjacent landowners on how it would impact their property. You do have the adjacent airport, which is obviously you're concerned with noise and height, as well as the employment area to the north and appropriate buffering from that use. So next steps are the circulation and bringing it back to the committee once we've received all of the feedback from technical staff, as well as ensuring that the infrastructure is at a point where we're ready to move forward. And that concludes my comments on this one.
Thank you. Any member of committee with a question of our planner? Member Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I threw it to Marcus. Just because they're kind of all combined, but when do you determine that an EIS is required?
In EIS, the determination would have been made at a pre-consultation meeting, and it would have been through technical staff, so it would have been through the GRCA that we would have made a determination whether or not an EIS would have been required.
Okay, so the one that you just presented, 3, I don't think we need one?
That's correct.
Okay, then I'm going to ask the question when we get to 2, because I see something there. Thank you.
Member Simons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Marcus. Do we have any anticipation as to when the tower, water tower will be completed? It seems it's been going on for a long, long time.
It is. I believe that the anticipated date is for later this year, but we will know better once the tender is approved and we have a better timing at that
Okay,
point.
good, thank you.
Any other member of committee with a question of our planner? Member Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the planner. When I look at the plan that you showed us, and we have 2 cul-de-sacs, is that a better design in the planning world rather than bringing that around and making it a crescent?
Well, through you, Mr. Chairman, that is something that will be reviewed by staff, and if it is determined that a cul-de-sac would be a better design, then that would come through the technical comments. One of the major concerns is obviously the employment lands to the north. So one of the concerns is having a number of lots that would back onto that. So in some instances, you want to minimize that, but I think there are technical reasons that you would also want to minimize cul-de-sacs as well.
And the lands that are to be conveyed to the school that are indicated on that plan, are they for playground, do you know?
The consultant may be able to answer that.
Thank you.
Any other member of committee with a question of our planner? Seeing none? Thank you. Any member of the audience would like to speak to this application? Or, I'm sorry, would the applicant or the agent of the applicant like to speak? Sorry, Mr. Cahoon. My apologies. I will get to you.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, my name is Joe Cahoon. I've been involved in this project over 5 years, and 5 years ago we had the brakes put on due to inadequate water supply. I see in the horizon a tower rising. So we are now back in the process. We applied back then for plan of subdivision and rezoning to allow single-family development. There's 35 single-family lots that are being proposed. Over the previous 5 years, we've completed lots of studies. First study was archaeology, and we went through the process we have from the archaeologist clearance letter. We had an EIS completed, scoped, that is. Completed, submitted to the Conservation Authority. Our original draft plan was adjusted to meet the requirements of the EIS. We had a traffic study completed, submitted by Frank Berry, and we are meeting those requirements outlined. We completed a noise study because of our proximity to the airport by HGC and Associates, and we were cleared for any requirements. We've completed a geotechnical to determine the types of soils that are on the site, the type of construction for pavement, bedding, for sewers, etc. We've completed a hydrogeological study. This project is being developed on municipal water and private septic system. So hydrogeological studies required to verify the groundwater quality. And we had a green light on that. We've completed a swim report. If you look in the top right corner in the blue, that's our swim pond. It's designed as an infiltration pond. The area that the development is on is approximately 40 feet of sand. So we have well infiltration qualities available. We've dealt with the Brant, Hallam and Norfolk separate school board. They're on the right, St. Teresa's. That was over 5 years ago. They wanted a bus drop-off on the right in front, or on the left front of the school on our right side of the road, which we're incorporating in the design. The area between the blue and the white is yellow, and that's a block that's being donated donated to the Catholic School Board for additional play area. The area behind the school to the north is their play area. This is an extension of Dalewood and Willowdale roads. The services are already, water services are already on. We'll be providing curb and gutter for the roadway. All lots will be on septic systems with reduced nitrates. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Any member of committee with a question of the applicant? Member Coleman.
Mr. Chair, to you, to the applicant, your stormwater management plan, Joe, is there an overflow in out?
Yes, the area to the north along the back of the lots is a natural outlet for the airport. It's a water course, and it drains across Green Lane and carries on further through the existing subdivisions that are on the other side of Green Lane.
Any other member of committee with a question of the applicant? Seeing none?
Thank you.
You may call you back. Any member of the audience would like to speak to this application? Please come forward, sir. State your name and address.
My name is Robin Kirby. I live at 101 Robinson Road. I'm concerned about the stormwater runoff and the retention pond. The retention ponds don't seem to work. When the Fox Hill Estates were put in at the end of Greens Road and Oak Hill Drive, since they were put in, often that water course that was referred to, the natural drainage course, there's water flowing there that never flowed before. There's a little creek starting about a quarter mile down, and that has now been degraded by runoff quite often. And I see that this will be just adding to that. I'm just very concerned about all that extra water going in. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the audience would like to speak to this application? Please come forward, sir. State your name and address.
My name is Terry Kirby. I live at 53 Kirby Crescent. I've lived in this area essentially all my life. And Robin is my brother. And my concerns are for the creek's quality. And I have a question for the planner about the water tower. What are you using for the source for the water tower?
Sir, just make your presentation.
Okay, so my concern is for the source of the water for the water tower. And I would like to emphasize that I have evidence of the degradation of that creek. The clarity of the water is less than I remember it. I have photos from before developments further up that creek and the color in flood stage. And in flood stage, it's much muddier. It carries a fine silt because they put fill in the valleys around it. That silt has run off into the creek. It's a fine powder in the creek. It's now killing all the microlife in the creek, the caddis flies and all the things that go into making that a trout stream. That's a high-value trout stream, cold water. It carries rainbow trout, brook trout, and brown trout. And so I already have evidence of the degradation of that stream to present to you if you wish, but I think I've already given it to the planner. And so those are the two concerns, water quality, and if the source of water is from wells in the area, then you'll also be probably reducing the flow of that stream. And thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the audience would like to speak to this application? I'll ask a second time, is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? I'll ask a third and final time, is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? Would the applicant choose to attempt to answer any of those concerns at this point in time, please come forward.
With regard to the stormwater management pond, the fellow that lives on Robinson Road, the design is controlled via the Grand River Conservation Authority as well as the Ministry of Environment. It goes through a rigorous analysis to make sure that it works. So this pond is a two-type pond, mostly infiltration. Major flows would overflow. That's the design that's being utilized here. Most ponds store and overflow, discharge at a lower rate over a long period of time. This one infiltrates, large flows will top into the watercourse. The source of that watercourse is the Brantford Airport. There's 2 large storm sewers discharged into that watercourse now. So the flows go up and down. A lot of times it's dry where we are. I'm not aware of the downstream area. Could be wet, but our area virtually dries out in the summer, except when it rains. The water quality for the county's water system, that's been under review for probably 20 years, and it's a natural lake up in that area. And private development investigated probably 6-7 years ago and concluded also with the county it's a huge source of potable water for the airport and the county. Thank you.
Thank you. How does the committee wish to deal with this application? Member Cohen?
Move your safe information.
Second by Member Pierce. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Moving on to D, POI Group, 49 Forest Road, PS 2-16-MD, and I'll ask our planner to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the applications for 49 Forest Road, again in the airport area, these applications are situated on number 2 of the slide above. The lands are approximately 10 acres in size, do have frontage on both Forest Road and Oak Hill, and are irregularly shaped. The lands are designated in the official plan as suburban residential and are within the airport settlement area. The present zoning of the site is suburban residential. And again, the applicants are requesting draft approval of the plan of subdivision to facilitate a 23-unit plan of subdivision consisting of single-family dwellings. The original design showed access off of Forest Road. There was a subsequent public meeting that was held out in the airport fire hall last year, and as a result of the feedback that was received at that point, a revised design was provided to staff this morning, actually, that showed an access off of Oak Hill. And so now the primary access would be off of Oak Hill, coming into the site and splitting into 2 separate cul-de-sac designs. Again, the key issue with this site is the timing of the airport water tower, as well as the relationship with the adjacent residential uses. And these lands are substantially sloped, so concerns have been raised regarding how that would impact on their properties. Other concerns related to traffic and the entrance on Forest Road, so that's been alleviated through this revised design. And so the next steps are obviously getting circulation and comments back, preparing a staff report, and bringing back a recommendation report at that point. and available for any questions.
A member of committee with a question of our planner? Member Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Marcus. The one is, the three applications, one's 23, one's 35, one's 23. You mentioned the traffic here. When they looked at the traffic, did they look at all three combined, or are they just looking at this one or that one? How's that? Well, what I'm asking, if we look at them, maybe all the cars coming out, say on 53 or whatnot, I mean, are we looking at a traffic light there? Or?
Well, through you, Mr. Chairman, the consultant can probably answer that a little bit better than I could, but they would look at it in a holistic sense. So they would be looking at what is there as well as what is proposed.
Anyone else with a question of our planner? Member Gatward?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the planner, you mentioned that you received a new plan today,
That's correct.
and this is it?
This is the revised plan. That's right.
And so it's now coming off Oak Hill with two cul-de-sacs instead of off Forest Road with one cul-de-sac. Can you tell me why that is?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, essentially it was feedback from the neighbors and the concern with the slope of the road on Forest Road. There were major issues and concerns from neighbors that were raised regarding safe access, safe sight lines, safety in general in winter months. And so as a result of the feedback they were receiving, they decided to revise the design to come off of Oak Hill where it's a flatter road area and modify their design accordingly.
There is, yes, a hill there on Forest Road, and I'm concerned about the intersection at Forest Road and 53, and Councillor Miller mentioned that, and I would hope that all three requests, the lots are totaled, and if that's over 100 lots additional, that a cost-sharing agreement perhaps could be considered between the three developers for a light at 53 and Forest Road. It's not an easy intersection. I use that intersection a lot now that Shelters Lane is closed, and go out Pleasant Ridge to 53, and sometimes you have to cross 4 lanes of highway, and I know that the residents have told me there's been many accidents there, so I appreciate staff looking into that. Thank you.
Any other member of committee with a question of our planner? Seeing none, we'll ask the applicant or the agent of the applicant to come forward and present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rob Van Port and J.H. Cahoon Engineering Limited. As pointed out by Marcus, an application was submitted back in 2015 for a single cul-de-sac development consisting of 23 residential lots. The subject property is designated and zoned suburban residential by the official plan zoning bylaw, and supports the establishment of single detached residential lots. The original subdivision was submitted to and discussed at the PAC meeting of September of 2016. But because of the water issue, this subdivision, as well as the one previously and the one that will be here later in the evening, was held in abeyance. We also had, there were a number of concerns expressed in September of 2016 about grading, primarily about the point of access onto Forest Road by a single cul-de-sac. And because of that, there was a redesign done, which was submitted at a public meeting I think in the last part of the summer of last year, and resulted in the submission that you see before you now. The subdivision has been reduced slightly from the 23 lots to 22. Again, the access is directed exclusively to Oak Hill Drive. There will be no access to Forest Road or the existing subdivision to the south. We submitted a number of reports and submissions with the original application, which obviously will have to be updated and reviewed based on the new layout, and would be certainly subject to scrutiny by the municipal staff prior to this matter coming back to council. Mr. Chair, as pointed out by Mr. Davison, the approval or the final development of this subdivision is contingent upon the water service, water tower being finalized. And as pointed out this evening, that looks like that'll be in the latter part of this year. Mr. Chair, I can respond to questions, or if need be, Mr. Cahoon can fill in any technical issues that I'm unaware of.
Any member of committee with a question of the applicant? Seeing none? Thank you. I may call you back up.
Thank you,
I'll, after the public portion, Mr. Trotter, I'll call you up. Any member of the audience with a comment on this application? Please come forward and state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Rhonda Moffat. I reside at 41 Madeline Road with my husband and 3 young adult children. We have expressed concerns before about the previous site plan. I won't repeat those. However, I do have one question and one comment. My question is, will there be some sort of fencing provided to separate this development from well, at least from our property, which backs up to, I believe, sorry, I can't read those numbers. Anyway, the left side, whatever that is. So I'd like to know about fencing. My comment is, if I understood this meeting correctly, this plan was provided this morning. It's the first time I've seen it, and I think it's really unfair that this is only now being provided when we are given opportunity to ask questions or to make comments and have not had sufficient time to ponder it and even discuss it as a family. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Any other member of the audience like to speak to this application? I'll ask a second time. Is there any other member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? I'll ask a third and final time. Is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? Seeing no one, I'll ask the applicant to come back. He may be able to answer a couple of those questions that came up regarding separation fencing. And then I'm going to ask one of our planners, Mr. Trotter, to come up and make a comment on this application. Bear in mind to the audience, we are not making a decision on this application this evening.
I was just going to mention that, Mr. Chair. Fencing, yeah, no, that's not an issue. We will review fencing and provide the fencing along the perimeter as requested. In respect to this is the first time you've seen the plan. This is just an information meeting. There will be further meetings, as pointed out by the chair, to look at the development in greater detail after staff have reviewed the various reports, technical reports that will have to be submitted.
Thank you. Mr. Trotter, you indicated you'd like to speak to this application?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A couple of points I'd like to make. Number one, I would like to thank all three of the developers that these three applications that you're hearing for the airport area. They were nice enough to give us time to deal with a couple of other applications, primarily in the Paris area, before we moved to this area. It made sense to do that, to time it with the elevated tank, and I just wanted to say thank you. With respect to this application specifically, I am a little bit disturbed that tonight we're seeing for the very first time a new plan. A plan would have been submitted. We have had all three of these applications on hold for about a year and a half, 2 years. I think they've had plenty of time to get us this revised plan. The information that we have got in our possession, we have already circulated to peer review agencies, to the GRCA, to all these other agencies. So my point here is we are going to need some additional time to deal with this application. Now, having said that, this application has been submitted, so this is an appealable plan. But I wanted to point out to the committee that from a staff level and from an agency and commenting perspective, we're seeing this for the first time, as are you. So I think that the committee would be doing the right thing to add a bit more time to this, and perhaps even do a recirculation of the neighborhood with this plan so that people can see that. They may be seeing it, well, obviously people here are seeing it for the first time. So we may wish to do that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I'm going to rephrase this question to receive his information, but I'm going to make a suggestion, and I'm looking right at Member Pierce to make a motion that we need more information before we approve receiving the information, and have this application recirculated.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you. Seeking a seconder, and I've got one in Member Coleman. Does the committee understand what I just did? We're going to recirculate for more information, try and keep the public more informed. As you've heard, we've been working on these applications for in excess of a year to a year and a half. Member Trotter would like this planner would like to speak again.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, but we may be requesting additional technical studies on this as well due to the relocation of that driveway.
Yeah.
So that would have to come in first, I would say, before we do that recirculation.
Mr. Trotter, that's why I've requested this motion that I've got on the floor and seconded for more information. That's why we're going to recirculate it to staff. Everyone understands what I've done? All those in favor? Opposed? Is carried. Moving on to E, the Green Farms subdivision at 299-301 Oak Hill Drive, PS 3-16-MD, and combined with ZBA 35-16-MD. And I'll ask our planner to present.
Thank you, Chairman. Front of us is our two applications, one for plan of subdivision and one for a zoning bylaw amendment. Again, keeping the airport theme alive, we are number one on the map, and it is immediately north of Ellington Place. So this site is about 13 acres in size. It does have frontage on Greens Lane. It is a little bit irregularly shaped with the frontage. The designation is suburban residential as well as natural heritage system, so you do see the water course that dissects the property running north-south. The intent of the residential is for low-density residential areas, single-family dwellings. So presently the zoning, again, is agricultural and natural heritage under zoning bylaw 6116. So what the application is to rezone the lands from agriculture to suburban residential. The natural heritage system would remain on the subject lands, and it would facilitate the establishment of a 23-unit plan of subdivision. This is the application, the proposal. So you do see lots that both front on Greens Lane as well as a cul-de-sac design. Key issues again, broken record, it's the elevated water tank, and also the relationship with the adjacent uses. So again, we've heard earlier that there were concerns with the impact on the natural heritage system that runs north-south through the property and the drainage, as well as the close proximity with the Brantford Airport with regard to noise and height regulations. So our next steps with this are to circulate and receive comments, prepare a planning report, and then be providing a formal recommendation and at a later date. And here to answer any questions you might have.
Any member of the committee with a question of our planner? Seeing none, is the applicant or the agent of the applicant here would like to present? Please come forward. State your name and address. Please come forward. State your name and address.
Hugh McNeil.
When you get to the microphone, sir.
Hugh McNeil, St. George, Ontario, 322 Burt Road. I was here because of the zoning application, and as I said earlier, that they're a little behind, so they haven't commented, and we haven't been outsourced to another engineering firm to help the county yet. So I know as much as you do. I did all the tests for the archaeological and the geotech. All that's done. I have the EIS or IES or whatever that was done for it, for the flora and the fauna down in the creek, which is on the far end there. But no, all there is like a drainage overflow ditch, which the county has an easement on already on that property through that area. Other than that, we've done everything we were told to do.
Any questions of the applicant? Member Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to Hugh. Can you talk a little bit about the stream then and what the EIS said? Is there a greater setback? You got to landscape it a certain way, or?
No, because there is no live stream on the property of development. It's a long way. It'd be another hundreds of meters away from the edge of that development. So it's not a real fact. It's just the outlying drainage ditch that the county uses. You've had it for years, right away, right through the property, right down to Robinson Road. They've never ever done anything with it either. They never have to do anything because it's so dry. It's all gravel right through there. So it's great drainage. It's that big word Joe used, the water goes in the ground. It doesn't, only in a major storm does it move. Sorry, I'm not an engineer, but.
Okay, thank you.
And it's the topographical, if you look past where it's developed on the topographical lines, it drops down probably over 150 acres. It drops down about 70 feet from the property down to there.
Any member of the committee with a question of the applicant? Member Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you be willing to cost share on a light for the corner of 53 and Forest Road on a prorated basis based on your number of lots, if a traffic study warrants that?
If the traffic study did warrant it, but I think aren't they more into those traffic circles? And 90% of the people who live here will be all triple car garages, will be part of the mandate. They'll be shooting out to the 403, going the other way to go to work. That's what I'm assuming because of the width. If the width of the lots here are wide, that's why there's only 23 of them.
Thank you.
Any other member of committee with a question of the applicant? Seeing none, stay close. I may call you back to answer upcoming questions. Any member of the audience would like to speak to this application? Please come forward, state your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Sim. I live at 7 Ellington Place. I had my plan all written out in terms of what I was coming here being planned to speak about. And I find myself furiously taking notes as I've sat here tonight because I have been shocked and appalled by the lack of transparency that there has been actually 3 developments in my area that are going to be highly impactful. And what I understand from this conversation tonight thus far is that each of these developments is being considered in isolation. And I would urge this committee to go back and have all of us who are impacted in one of these developments be given all 3 development applications for consideration holistically. I've heard some mention already tonight of that concept regarding a traffic light. Yes, I would agree with that. There are a number of concerns. I could have spoken after each of those 3 applications. I sat there quietly waiting until I felt it was my turn. I'm extremely disappointed in the lack of transparency in that regard. And as a new member of Brant County who has lived in the community now for a year, I wasn't privy to other previous applications that have been on hold and such forth. So I urge this committee now to make a motion when I'm finished that there be a reconsultation holistically for all 3 of these developments, because not only do they impact the specific land that these homes would be built on, but it impacts a lot of other things. And now I will return to my pre-documented list of concerns, which again was strictly related to the development to the north of Ellington Place, where I live. Today, I do not travel on the 403 home. I travel through town from my place of work just off of Oak Park and the 403. Why do I do that? Because I have children who go to school in Brantford. Why do my kids go to Brantford instead of Brant County? Because St. Teresa's was overpopulated. And when I moved here a year ago, I was told that there were 35 applicants ahead of me in terms of kids trying to get into that school. So 2 days before school started was when I got my denial from St. Teresa and quickly had to scramble to get my kids into a school. We have on this proposal of what I've done the math, 35 plus 23 plus 23 is 81 new homes in these 3 different developments, all in this area. Who do you think are buying those homes? It's going to be families with children. 81 new families. Let's just guess maybe half of them have kids and probably 2 kids. We're looking at an increase of 100 kids right there, potentially in that neighborhood, who need schools to go to. And wouldn't it be great if they could be at that nice, quaint community school? Well, that's not going to happen. That school is extremely under capacity for the kids who want to go there today in that zoning. I haven't heard anything other than an increased play area regarding St. Teresa's school and how they're going to accommodate the children. Point number 2, again, with the children. The kids who go to St. Teresa's school can't walk to school anymore. Why is that? Because people blow through on Oak Hill Drive at 80, 90 kilometers an hour, come off Greens Road at 80 to 90 kilometers an hour, tear through that corner, and you have people trying to walk their kids, less than a kilometer to school and feel unsafe to do that because you have people using those roads as thoroughfares in and through the city. Now we're going to increase again the homes and the increased traffic in that area. That's only going to exacerbate the problem. There are no sidewalks on Oak Hill. There are a number of families who walk, run, walk their dog, walk along that road to get to public transit, walk along that road to get out to the main road to get a bus, because buses don't go out all the way to us. We have currently installed speed radars on Oak Hill Drive, drawing attention to the speed issue. Thank you, City of Brantford. That doesn't extend beyond Force Road. We've already heard the concerns about Force Road as well. I would share those concerns around the traffic and that intersection. Again, that's a place where people coming down that hill and turn. The assumption is that there is no traffic. That is what I observe every day when I drive that road 3 or 4 times a day. People do not look. There is no assumption that another car is coming. We just turn. And I will say that there are times when I have made that wrong choice myself. There's wildlife concerns. There are a number of times that I've come along that road as well on Oak Hill Drive. There are deer. There is a large deer population that use the farmers' fields, that take up their home and residence in those wood forests, and they cross that road. I have had to stop multiple times for those deer. We have geese. We have 3 little families of geese that live there in the cemetery pond, and those little geese are learning to cross the road when you've got cars traveling 80, 90, 100 kilometers an hour tearing down that strip. We have wild turkeys. Those are my kids' favorite. They're a rare breed when we get to see one of those, but my goodness, we don't want to see those poor things injured or hurt. Again, I would voice the concern about the lack of services that we as this community already experience. We travel a long distance to get to any commercial establishment, and traveling to get to a commercial establishment means that we are traveling on Oak Hill. We are not going out to Greens and 403. We aren't just junkies getting on the highway and running up into our whatever jobs we need the 403 for. We are members of this community, we contribute to this community, and we take part in this community as represented by me. My first time being at a council meeting, boy, did I have some passion to share with you tonight. I have a number of concerns as well with regards to the water. I didn't understand that a water tower was being built. I'd like to understand where the funds for that are coming from, whether that has already been paid for, or whether that will be an increase on taxpayers in the community so that we can support paying for these new 81 homes that are coming, supposedly, potentially coming. I have concerns also about some of the runoff and the drainage, as the farmers' fields would be developed into homes. It's going to create more water runoff, and where is that water going to be accommodated as those things happen? I would summarize now my points and go back to where I started, in that I could make the same statements 3 times over for each of these 3 developments, and I think it is wrong of us as a community and a county to consider one at a time. These need to be dealt with in conjunction and holistically, as we are a community and a growing community. Thank you.
That's enough. I'll call for an adjournment. Is there any other member of the audience who'd like to speak to this application? I'll ask, please come forward.
Robin Kirby again, 101 Robinson Road. I'd just like to reiterate my concerns that I had before regarding the other property, the number 2, I guess it was.
I'd like you to speak to this application, sir.
And I'm concerned with the runoff, basically, the stormwater runoff from this proposed subdivision, and also the destruction of natural habitats. I sent a letter. I assume that letter was okay. I'm sorry, I can't speak too well about this. But I want to just emphasize that there's the potential for a lot of damage due to the water runoff, and the water retention ponds, in my view, do not work. Yes, that's Kirby Crescent. The water detention ponds do not work because water will run down there quite often, and it doesn't get absorbed. It just runs down into the creek. And as my brother was saying previously, the creek has been silted up by all this. I should be able to say more, but I can't. That's all. Thank you.
Any other member of the audience like to speak to this application? Please come forward, sir. State your name and address.
Gary Kirby, 53 Kirby Crescent. My concerns, I've already outlined, are for the creek, but I want to put a little bit of a different spin on this. I want to stress the fact that this is sloped land. It's sand. It's going to erode. It's going to fill that stream with more silt. It's going to require fill to level it to build the houses. That's going to silt that stream. And I have photos of the quality of water coming out of the holding pond that exists, and it is lower. It's a good idea. It's probably the best you can do in the circumstances. I don't want to criticize it in that aspect, but it does lower the quality of the water. And each of these things are like nickel and diming your water quality. If you silt this little tiny stream up, you're also silting up the Grand River. And if you do this enough with all the little tiny streams that are around the country, you're going to ruin the water that you're drinking. You're going to increase the costs of cleaning that water. And so let's go to the point. I don't think any development whatsoever should be allowed on these lands for the following reasons. It's too heavily sloped. It's already zoned agriculture. It should not be taken out of agriculture. It is part of a stream, and streams, water, and air now are precious. You cannot underestimate how precious, how rare, and what an exquisite resource you have now in a community such as this, where they want to put in 81 more homes. It's a rare, rare commodity which you should be protecting beyond all things. And I would like to propose to Hugh, because I know this is your livelihood and I don't want to involve your livelihood, but I would propose to you, Hugh, that what we do is we get a land trust together, we put that land aside as a park. It will be managed either by the land trust or the GRCA. The GRCA is on board a little bit. They, of course, can't go too far. They don't really have funds. But I think we can get some funds from the airport, because it would also protect the airport's employment base by not having noise complaints. So my proposal is, if you can give us some time and we can work together, we will take that land, we'll set it aside, all of it, all the way down to Robinson Road, and maybe even across Robinson Road, and I'll try to contribute, because I live right there, and I'm in a natural heritage alert. My house sits right where it shouldn't, and I have to live with that. It shouldn't even be there, but that's the way it is, and I live there now. So I am also involved in this personally. I'm trying to put the native species back in there, the native trees, the native plants. I'm trying to get out of the agricultural business so we don't start to pollute that. So we're trying to move that creek boundary up. We're trying to get some trees in there. So the proposal is that we make this a park. We restore it to an oak savanna, which I have expertise with Peter Carson in Long Point Basin Land Trust. So we can do that. I'm sure we can do it with work. And if we can get these various people together, and perhaps somebody like the Royal Bank or Johnson's to give us a corporate donation, then my proposal would be, let's set this aside as a park. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the audience would like to speak to this application? Come forward, sir. State your name and address. Make your presentation.
My name is Aaron Kirby. I live at 111 Robinson Road. My concern is for the area as a whole, degrading the natural area, taking away farmland. Right now, the way it is, the subdivisions that exist, there's some farmland between the subdivisions and the wild areas that are along the streams and rivers. And if we keep pushing development toward the wild areas, we'll lose that buffer. And the animals that exist there now, the coyotes that hunt the fields for mice and rabbits, the turkeys, the geese and the swans that come and eat from the fields, we'll lose that, and there'll be more pressure put on that. We'll lose our wildlife. We'll have more problems with wildlife being in people's backyards where they're not wanted, that sort of thing. It is a precious area. We should be preserving this area. It's not something we want to see in your pictures on the wall, what used to be. It's something we can protect now and enhance. I see in other places where they've developed, and they have put houses right up to the edges of ravines. So you have these wild areas, and you have the stream, and there's very little. There's plant life. There's very little that uses it in the way of wildlife. You have the houses and the people right there at the top of the ravine. There's very little wildlife. You need a buffer. You need something between that, and if nothing else, agricultural fields. The runoff, it is on sand. The problem being the water isn't going to go down through the ground if you put a roadway and driveways. When the water comes down and when the rain falls, when there's snow runoff, it's going to channel down the driveways, down the roads, and down into that creek. And right now, the creek is fairly stable still. It's changing. It's noticeably changing. It'll be a dramatic change if this happens and if further developments happen. So I would really urge council and anyone who has any control over this to very carefully consider what you're doing if you pass this. I think that's all.
Thank you. Any other member of the audience like to speak to this application? Please come forward, sir.
I would just like to say that you have a wonderful opportunity here if we can get the landowners to cooperate. It would be possible to not develop, but create a naturalized area such as a green belt designation all the way from the mouth of Whiteman's at Five Oaks down through the following three properties and down to the creek mouth. I think there's a private building on would be to the east of that, so you can't go very much further east. But there are no buildings on that stretch, and if we were able to work with you and get that created as a park, it would be a feeder park that would go right into that whole green belt area. It would be a wonderful, wonderful resource if you guys could put that together and create like a wildlife sanctuary, naturalized area for plants, animals, and species, native species, and so on. You wouldn't need to interfere with the agricultural land on the top. You only have to go the bank and the river bottom. And if you look on any map, it shows up green as a green strip on an air photo or a satellite photo. It's a beautiful green strip runs up there from the creek mouth that we're talking about that's being silted in. And so I think consider this application in a broader view in terms of protecting all that beautiful resource that you have. Everyone knows what a wonderful stream Whiteman's is. It would be a tragedy to have that thing wrecked too. Thank you.
Any other member of the audience like to speak to this application? I'll ask a second time. Is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? I'll ask a third and final time. Is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to the application? Seeing no one else, I'd ask Mr. McNeil if he'd like to come back and address any of those concerns at this point in time, sir. Come forward if you're going to speak. Don't speak from there. You know that.
I just think it's a little premature till the the rest of the reports are in. I have comments back from staff, which I haven't got yet. In fairness to them, I knew that.
Thank you. I want to assure you and every other member of the audience, no decision will be made tonight until we have all the information in here. And this is what this is about, is receiving information. So at this point in time, I'd ask committee how would they like to deal with this. Member Simons? Seeking a seconder. Seconded by Member Powell. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Just want to address the audience that we took your information tonight. It will be dealt with by both the applicant and staff. There would be no decision made, I can see, in the near future. Normally, applications come back in 30 days, but I can't see this one coming back. But anyone who wants to be updated, there's an information sheet back there. Put your name and address on it, and you'll be kept informed by staff. I'm going to call for a short recess at this point before we move on to the applications for consideration.
That's right. See, I said no sport is safe at my age. That's the problem.
It's okay, I don't know if it makes it step up first base too far. Yeah, hamstring, where it meets the knee. to Section 8, public hearings under the Planning Act to consider staff recommendations. And the first one is 8A, Government File Number 421, Salt Springs Church Road, ZBA 10-18-RA. And I'll ask our planner to present.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. The subject lands are located at 421 Salt Spring Church Road. The applicant is proposing a temporary garden suite for a maximum of 20 years. The lands are currently designated agricultural and natural heritage in the official plan. The proposed garden suite will be located where the existing current buildings and structures are located. And the concerns from GRCA were that the proposed garden suite to be located outside the floodplain, and that's how it has been proposed by the applicant as well. No other concerns were raised through the circulation of this application. Staff is requesting that the proposed temporary rezoning be approved, subject to the applicant entering into a garden suite agreement with the county, along with a $5,000 security deposit that would be held to ensure that the structure is removed after the expiry of the time frame. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Any member of the committee with a question of our planner? Seeing none, is the agent or applicant here would like to present? Please come forward, sir. State your name and address. Make your presentation.
Doug McClellan, 421 Salt Springs Church Road, Brantford, Ontario. Just like to put a garden suite on the existing property. Retiring, and my nephew's buying the farm, and I'd like him to take care of me in my years to come.
Any member of the committee with a question of the applicant? Member Simons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the presenter, can you tell me how much land is requested to be rezoned?
Oh, it's just a garden suite, so it'd only be 45 feet by...
That looks pretty big,
Oh, yeah, there's another...
It says lands to be rezoned. Is that all that piece of land to be rezoned?
No, it's just a very small area.
I was going to say, that's pretty big for a garden suite.
Our planner will answer that for you, if
Thank
that's
you.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is typically the notice that we sent out to the neighbors, letting them know these are the subject lands, and the rezoning proposal is on the, it shows the subject lands. The actual bylaw is on page 109 of the agenda, which shows the portion of the lands to be rezoned. That is where the existing buildings and structures are. So just approximately that area is going to be rezoned.
Okay, that's... Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to the applicant. The garden suite, would you use the existing septic, or would you create a new one?
We create a new one, yes.
Okay, and then that new one, I'm understanding it's nowhere near the natural heritage?
No.
All right, thank you.
Any other member of committee with a question of the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. Is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? I'll ask a second time. Any member of the audience would like to speak to this application? I'll ask a third and final time. Is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? Seeing none, how does the committee wish to deal with it? Member Coleman? So moved the recommendation. Second by Member Gatward. Questions or comments? Member Eddy? None? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. This will go forward to council the third Tuesday of this month for final approval. Thank you. Moving on to B, Billy John DeGrand, 2 Willow Street. ZBA 32-16-RA. And I'll ask our planner to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. The applications for zoning bylaw amendment has been received from Glenn Schnarr and Associates, agent for Kayak Urban Towns Limited. The applicant is proposing to change the zoning on the subject lands to allow for 75 stacked townhouse dwelling units. The lands currently are within the primary urban settlement boundary of Paris. They are located urban residential and are within the Paris floodplain plains policy area. Number of concerns were received at the public information meeting held in December of 2016 regarding traffic, sight lines, access onto the site, etc. The traffic impact analysis that was submitted by the proponent, it has been peer reviewed, has been reviewed by our various departments, operations staff and development engineering as well. And staff is satisfied that there is a left turn proposed from Willow Street onto the site, that this will, along with the upgrades to the existing entrance and additional signage along Willow Street, those will address any concerns. The site plan application was submitted concurrently after the information meeting in December of 2016, and it is near completion. So staff is currently working on finalizing a few details on the left turn lane with the applicant. The comments have been just circulated to the applicant, and hopefully within the next couple months, the site plan application will be completed as well. All the technical studies that have been reviewed and accepted by various departments and agencies through both the zoning bylaw amendment application as well as through the site plan control application process. There were certain warning clauses that were identified through the noise study because of the Dundas Street West high-level bridge. These will be included in the site plan agreement that will be registered on title. There will be additional noise measures that will be implemented through the building permit process as well. Staff has determined that the proposed land uses are being directed to an appropriate area. It will not adversely impact any existing or future land uses. Staff is recommending that the application be approved, as the proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement, conforms to the growth plan and to the general intent of the official plan. That concludes my comments. Thank you.
Member Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, if I could just ask for a little indulgence around the horseshoe here while I kind of say my little spiel. First of all, I want to start by saying I do understand that what is before us tonight is just for the zoning. Okay, I understand that. Rosika, you had mentioned something along the lines of a left turn lane coming in there. I wish I had a pointer, because I've read this over. I've gone to that street several times, going up, coming down, and if I may, please. My first time with one of these, bear with, oh, I didn't mean to change it, see that? Okay, here we go. Okay, yeah, okay, sorry. So again, this is coming down the hill, okay? So I'm assuming that somewhere in here, obviously it has to be in here or it's going to hit the curb, is where the left turn lane is going to be. Now, my problem here is the fact that if I'm coming down this hill, fine and dandy, I'm in a left turn lane. So I'm waiting for vehicles to come around this corner that are heading up the hill. My way is clear. Now, on a left turn lane, it's got to stop here, because that is where the corner starts. So my thinking would be a left turn lane is you're turning in here. You're not. You're actually going straight and then turning into the entrance here. What I'm worried about is if we have a left turn lane here, vehicles are going to be down in this area right here, which is right in the middle of the road to oncoming traffic coming up Willow Street. As far as what this is as an infill for this location, I think it's great. It's a great use of this land. What I'm totally concerned about here, none of this stuff here. What I'm concerned about here is safety of people. Number one, walking. Number two, in their vehicles. If a car is sitting here, and I'm going to say in the middle of summer, I'm not even going to get to wintertime yet. If a car is sitting here in a left-hand turn lane coming in, and a vehicle comes around this corner, I'm afraid that they're, hopefully not, hopefully I'm totally wrong here, but to me, having a turn lane here is asking for trouble coming down this hill, even in the summertime. In the wintertime, if anybody has gone up or down that hill, they know what it's like in the wintertime. And to have a car that's stopped right here, sure, there's a lane to get by on the side, but we've got our little building that sits right here on the lawn, and we know that it's already been hit a couple times. coming down that hill. Again, I understand what this is all about. I don't have a problem with what's happening here. What I have a problem with is this entrance. There is no way that you can have a left-hand turning lane here and then continue to go straight and then come into your entrance. Again, I understand we're here tonight for the zoning, but I said my piece on this before, and I want to say this again. I'm very worried about this turning in from coming down the hill. I appreciate everybody's diligence.
Member Simons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could have the pointer also, if I may, please.
Careful, don't hit that other one, you'll go back.
I don't even know what I'm hitting.
Just hit the little top one there. Yeah.
Okay. I'm with Councillor Pierce on the problem in this area here. I'm wondering, because the cars will be stopping in this area here to make the left-hand turn, I'm wondering if this portion in here could be cleared, instead of having the cars come into this laneway, have this cleared to make the entranceway here, so that the cars come directly from the left turn into this area. I'm wondering if that could be possible in the site plan. I don't know, but to me, as it is right now, when you come up Willow Street, you come up and you have to go over a ridge and then into a valley here to come into this area. And I think that should be all taken away there and made a very clear sight lines for these cars coming in. And again, I'm going to say, if they're stopped here to make a left turn, I think they should be coming into here instead of coming all the way down here to make it into this area here. That's my concerns, and I really would like to see that looked upon, at least to be put into the site plan. As far as the development goes, it's an infill, it's perfect, and it's cleaning up a bad disastrous area that was there before. So I'm very happy for that, but that is my concerns, because this is a terrible, dicey road in the wintertime. And as we know, traffic is not going to stop. Traffic is going to be coming there full force, because all the people are using Willow Street now, because it's an easier access into Paris. Yes. It's easier in and easier out. So unless they go Green Lane, which some of them do, it's going to be Willow Street. So there's my problem. And I think I'm on John's side when we say the corner there is going to be the bad piece. So if we can come to some kind of agreement with site plan, that would be great. Thank you.
Member Powell?
Just to follow up what the other two councilors said, I'm looking at the page 125 map. To have a turn lane on Willow Street, we have county infrastructure on both sides of Willow Street. The one on the east side, which shows as a little brown rectangle, is very close to the road. The first house on Willow Street on the east side is extremely close to the sidewalk and the road. And like the two previous councilors said, I'd be curious as to when the left turn lane starts, how long it's going to be, because I look at the one by No Frills, it's a fair distance involved. Here, we don't have a lot of distance to work with. And again, it's all downhill, there is a curve, and then you're going to make a sharp left to go into a housing development.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In preparation for the meeting tonight, I had a conversation with Mr. Cunningham regarding this. I was told that we have a firm that's hired who specializes in this type of roadway for this type of issue that we're dealing with right now. And I brought up the same concern about the water pumping station on the corner there, how close it is to the road. Apparently, if you go with a squared off curb, it actually reduces the vehicle from hitting the building because there's only a 2 to 3 meter follow through after it hits the curb, apparently on a squared curb. On a graduated curb, it's 5 to 7 meters farther they can go. So that reduces it quite a bit, apparently, if there is a vehicle hitting that curb or trying to veer off and get away from an accident on that corner. But I still have a concern, as these councilors beside me on either side have, is mentally I see accidents happening there with a left-hand turn lane in this current situation the way it is right now. only from experience in seeing accidents there in the past, especially the vehicles hitting the building, which you can't totally blame on the road, obviously. It's driver awareness as well. But it's just a concern that I have as well. Thank you. Member Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Rashika. Do any of these units have basements, or is it just the ones closest to the river that aren't allowed basements?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, none of these units have basements. They have to be above the flood level, so they are just above ground. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would also like to answer some of the questions on the left turn lane.
Just hang tight. Member Paul, Rajika may answer your question before you ever ask it.
Also, we have Walnut Lane, which I believe is two-way traffic. So you have people coming onto Willow Street, halfway up that hill. Are they going to be sitting into that turn lane? Are they going to have room to go left or right and go up or down that hill?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, there's a few things that I would like to point out on this site plan. There is going to be that much of a road widening that will be given to the county so that these turn lanes, I don't know exactly where it starts, but it will taper off around here to make a full left turn lane at the entrance of the site. We do have road allowance along the north and the south side of the site, which will give us enough room to redo the line painting that is required to make a left turn lane and also a through traffic to continue going on the Willow Street. The trees and shrubs, they will be actually grubbed along the frontage of Willow to provide additional sightlines for the incoming and outgoing traffic as well. So all those things have been looked at by various departments, especially peer review consultants who have reviewed the traffic lane, the left turn lane in detail. And as I mentioned, there's just a few minor details about the width of that left turn lane and additional signage that is being worked on right now. But it has been accepted in principle that this will work. So those are my comments in response to your questions.
Member Simons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Rashika, how many feet or meters I guess we go by, from the edge of the turning lane, the end of the turning lane, I guess, the arrow, to coming into the entrance as is there now? How many meters would that be?
This is a technical question, Member Simons, that I feel you're putting Rajika in a very difficult spot.
Okay.
Because she's a planner.
I know.
Not a site plan coordinator.
Is there someone here that could answer
You're
it?
putting our planner in a very difficult position here.
Is there someone here that could answer that question?
At this point in time, if Rajika would like to attempt it, go ahead. But that's.
Okay.
I
That's fair.
consider that question on the board.
I would, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just simply state there is a conceptual drawing for left turn lane specifically. I can certainly circulate it to the committee members tomorrow. And then there the applicant and their traffic engineers are present, and they may be able to answer the very detailed questions about where it starts and how it will function.
Any other questions of our planner? Member Eddy?
Did you say it could be circulated or would be circulated?
Sorry, I did say that I will circulate it tomorrow.
You will circulate?
That's right.
Yes. Any other members of the committee with a question of our planner? Seeing none, I'll ask the applicant or the agent of the applicant to come forward and make his presentation. And these might be some of the technical questions you may want to ask.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Evan Perlman. I am a planner with Glenn Schnarr and Associates. We are the authorized agents and consultants for the owners of the property. With me tonight is Mr. Ryan McLaughlin of Crozier and Associates. He is a professional engineer, a traffic engineer, and if there's any specific questions you'd like to ask him, I'd be happy to invite him up. Otherwise, don't feel I have much to add to Rashika's presentation, which was very well done. It appears from listening to some of the comments that land use is not the issue to be discussed. I just would like to add that we are working with the peer reviewer, which the county has retained for the issue of the access into the site, the left lane, etc. That is being handled exclusively right now through the site plan application. And as recently as last week, we have been going back and forth and addressing their minor detailed comments to get this to a final stage. So if there's any questions on the rezoning aspect, otherwise I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Questions of the applicant by committee? Member Simons?
Mr. Chair, I have a question to Mr. Crozier, who's the expert on traffic, if I may. This
Sure,
gentleman said that I could do that.
Yeah,
I don't have planning.
Mr. McLaughlin of Crozier.
McLaughlin, okay, thank
Sure.
you.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Hi, I'm Ryan McLaughlin from Crozier and Associates.
Yes, and I'm going to repeat my question. Can you tell me how many meters it is from the end of the arrow, left turn arrow, to come into the property that is situated there now?
So the left turn lane will basically go right up to the sorry, so it will go right up to there. Basically, there'll be a 15-meter, it basically goes right up to the entrance. So there'll be a 15-meter sort of setback, and then the storage of the left turn lane, and then the corresponding taper.
So 15 meters from the end of the arrow to the entrance?
Sorry, when you say end of the arrow,
I'm
do you mean
talking about that portion at the very end here, because hopefully there'll be arrows coming down the hill showing where the left turn lane will be situated. So the last arrow, as you turn into the property, how far will that be from the end of the arrow to the property entrance?
Sorry, are you referring to like right here?
Yeah, how far? Yeah.
If you were to basically extend the entrance, extend the entrance curve straight up is where the left turn lane storage would start, and then go back from there, basically.
I'm not getting it. I'm not obviously not giving the correct question.
Sorry, can I
Sure.
give you this?
Sure. I'm just. Yes.
Yeah, so the arrows.
The left turn arrow is in, here, let me get this going again. Uh-oh, he did something to this. The top one? Yeah. Help me, Rashika. It's all in check. Okay, okay, okay. The turning arrow is right in here, correct? That's the end of the turning arrow. We're going to start at the top. We come down the hill like this. There will be arrows coming down here.
Yes.
This will be the last arrow before it comes into the site. How far is it from that last arrow to into this site here?
So,
End of the turning lane.
So the location of the arrow doesn't correspond to the length of the storage.
End of the turning lane, I guess.
Yeah. It's so the location of the arrow. So right now it is about 20-ish meters back.
20 meters.
From the extension of the entrance, I guess.
So right here?
Which is just a pavement marking, right?
So it takes, if there's 20 meters approximately from here?
But additionally, there would be the white pavement markings that would delineate the left turn lane. So it'd be more than, it's the white markings with the left turn lane arrow as well.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Member Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So,
sure.
So I just want to confirm what you were saying there. So the end of the turning lane, you were saying is going to be right in about here?
Approximately, yes.
Okay, so all due respect, that's in the middle of a curve.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to understand how that's going to happen.
It's in the middle of a curb. So
There's a curve, Willow Street comes up here, and there's a curve.
Right there.
If you're saying that the end of the turning lane is going to be here, that's in the middle of a curve. So I'm trying to understand how that works.
Sure. So the road is getting widened to add this lane, right? So currently, the existing platform out there cannot accommodate a left turn lane.
I get that.
So it will be widened to the north to
Okay.
accommodate this additional lane width. So part of that left turn lane design, you would have your taper, and then your storage, which is the parallel portion where vehicles would be sitting. And then on the opposite side, it would also be widened so that the opposing through lane doesn't come directly against the left turn lane, right? So if the left turn lane is 3.5 meters, then the other side would be widened at 3.5 meters to facilitate safe traffic flow down Willow Street, continuing along this, the bottom of, down the hill, I guess.
Okay, perfect. So what we're going to do here is we're going to widen this curve. Is that what you're saying?
So it's being widened to the north.
I get that. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's being widened to here. So we're going to widen this curve, right?
Yes.
So whether you widen the curve or leave the curve as it is, it's still a curve in the road.
Oh, curve,
And what you're
yes.
telling
I
me
thought you
is
said
that the
curve,
turning
yeah.
lane is going to be right here, which is going to be right on the curve.
Yes, so part of the analysis that we performed would have been a site distance analysis, ensuring that we met the appropriate bylaws so that vehicles exiting the site and the maneuvers around that entrance would be met.
Okay, so I'll leave it at this, the fact that I think you've heard loud and clear here that what's happening here isn't an issue. What's happening right here is going to be the issue. Okay, so if you're telling me, and you're the professional here, if you're telling me that the turning lane is going to end in the middle of a bend in the road, that's kind of awkward. So what I'm suggesting is that when you come back with those drawings, I would suggest you do not have a turning lane in the middle of a curve in the road. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other member of committee with a question of the applicant? Seeing none. Thank you. Any member of the audience would like to comment on this application? I'll ask a second time, is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? I'll ask a third and final time, any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? Bearing in mind, we're going to make a decision here. Before I call for a mover and seconder, I'm going to ask Mr. Trotter to come forward who'd like to comment on this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pardon me. First of all, I think to see an infill project come before this committee with very, very few people in the audience objecting to it is a very good thing. It's rare that you get that, in my experience. Perhaps to assist council with this application, what you may wish to do is give perhaps 2 readings to a bylaw, bring the site plan back for review, and then once council has seen the site plan and the detail of that road design, you could approve both things on the same evening. That's an option that's there for council.
Does anyone have any questions, Mr. Trotter? Seeing none. Mr. Miller.
I'm moving the application.
Okay, but you're going to have to make an addition to this recommendation. 2 readings of it. Did you hear what Mr. Trotter said?
I did, but I thought that we do that when we actually go to council.
I'd like to combine it with one motion.
Okay.
Approve it with a second reading of the site.
I'm not sure I can.
That's what I would like to do. Maybe committee doesn't want to do that.
I'll defer to our clerk if he could help us.
Councilor Chambers.
You can't go to a bylaw, it's just not, predetermined bylaw, it's not.
Member Galward.
There's a way to do it.
I'm seconding Councilor Miller's
So you approve this?
approval of the recommendation. And after second reading, we will deal with the traffic site plan before we have third reading, and that will be done at the next council meeting.
Everybody's comfortable with that? Am I ready?
Are we proposing that we deal with that under the order of bylaws? Is that what's being stated? It's
What I've got right now is a motion to approve the recommendation that's before us as written. That's what's before me right now, and it's been moved in second. Member Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for clarity for Mayor Eddy, the approval tonight will go to council, and then council will have the opportunity to see the site plan before we actually approve. The site plan will be part of our next package. Will it, Rashika?
We don't
Council
know.
package?
We don't know that.
Well, that's what was said by Mr. Trotter. Or maybe I misunderstood.
We approve this. Yeah.
And hold off on to bringing the bylaw in front of council, and we can debate, not this month, and maybe by August council, we can bring it in front. Can it make sense?
Of course it does. You're smarter than me. In discussion with our planner, what we would like to do is approve the recommendation as written, but we'll hold off on the site plan bylaw until it comes forward. Under bylaw. Does everybody understand, so that I will understand? Member Chambers.
I don't understand a site plan bylaw. There's no such thing. Maybe you can rephrase that.
I'll let you answer them. What we would like to do is approve the recommendation as written. We understand there's concerns with turning lanes, curves, hills, numerous things. There's going to have to be a site plan recommendation here before this whole project can go forward. Comfortable with that response? Thank you.
Do you want me to add?
No, you can
Okay,
add to
so-
it, Rashika, absolutely. I want Robert Chambers to leave here comfortable tonight.
I was just going to make a suggestion that we, if committee wishes to make a recommendation and staff do not put the bylaw on for next council, we wait until the site plan details are dealt with and then bring forward the bylaw for council adoption, not end of July. If the site plan details are finalized end of July, we would put it on the agenda for council. If it's not finalized, we will defer it for August council.
Member Chambers.
Yeah, I understand what everybody's trying to do here. We have delegated approval of the site plan to staff. That's the issue. We would like to see the traffic issue around this table prior to the approval by staff. So the fear is if we approve the bylaw, then staff will approve a site plan that doesn't meet the issues that I have confidence that it will, but that's the issue. So what we would like to do is have a look at the traffic portion of the site plan prior to the final approval. And I think Rashika has identified a method to do that, to move the recommendation, to hold off on the approval of the bylaw until such time as we can have a peek at the site plan to make ourselves rest assured that we're comfortable with it. If we are, then the bylaw can be tabled. We approve the bylaw, everybody's happy, except for the first traffic jam that occurs in this area.
Now we're getting on the same page. Does everybody understand that? approve this recommendation, but the site plan with the traffic control and all those unanswered questions tonight will come before us before it's approved. Is everybody comfortable? Member Coleman?
I'm not, Mr. Chair. I'd like to see us approve it, but bring it back to the next planning meeting so we got ample time to discuss this. If there are problems that night, by the 4 pairs of doctors, and I see what's on their faces that there could be, we need to study it a little more in depth than just doing a council meeting on this reading the third bylaw. I have problems with this because I think we need to look at this, and I'd rather see it not just like that. I want to see the map ahead of time so I can study it, and that's not doing that tonight. I'd actually prefer to defer the whole damn thing for tonight and bring it back to planning next month with all the maps in front of us. There's already a motion to approve it, so I'm not so comfortable bringing it back to council.
Would you like to move a deferral? Well,
I'm not for that.
I've seen motions on the floor and somebody defer and we defer it. This won't be a precedent center.
Oh, God, it might be.
Well,
Sorry if I may, what you're really asking for is to bump up the site plan to approval to council.
no?
And by doing that, council, like, we don't need a recommendation to do that. Staff have the ability to bump it up, and we would bump it up, given the concerns that have been expressed here about the entrance. So you could do a couple of things. You could approve the application tonight, and you could approve the bylaw. The bylaw doesn't mean you're going to get this development. The bylaw means that you could facilitate some sort of development on this property. The details that are being looked at now with Ainley are things like the traffic entrance, turning lanes, things like that. This plan doesn't show, I don't think, the ultimate design. And I think if the plan had that and we came back with site plan, that would include the engineering design, the turning lanes, and those sorts of details as part of the approval of the site plan. So bumping it up would give committee and council the ability to approve it. And I think that's where you're heading, or you want to head.
Member Simons?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So what's the process to do this? Do we ask for a bump up tonight on the site plan?
Yeah, you can. I mean, from what I understand under the bylaws, that it doesn't even need a council resolution, just needs a request, and staff can bump it up. And we, sure, absolutely.
Just a request, simple request. Someone just had to say.
It's been asked, so it will be done.
Okay, thank you. Is that the agreed upon by council?
So you're making an amendment?
It's just a simple, straight request. It's bumped up.
So I've got a motion on the floor to approve this recommendation
Yes.
with the request for a bump up. Member Pierce?
I totally agree with what's going on here. The only question I have is, with the bump up, is that going to bump it up and bring it to the upcoming council meeting? Or as Council Coleman said, is that going to bump it to the next planning?
My preference would be it comes to the next planning meeting.
Yes.
Yes.
That's my preference. If I was sitting out there,
Yeah, and that's what I want to make sure is the fact that it's not going to come to council because Council Coleman's got a great, it's true. The discussion we've had tonight, I'm sure there may be more. So if this is a bump up to the next planning meeting, perfect.
it may be even 2 planning meetings away.
As long as it's to a planning, that's the key.
Yes, I just want to make sure it may not come back to the next meeting. It'll come back when the issues have been resolved. It could be 1 or 2 meetings away, it could be 3 meetings away, we don't know. But once we get to a point where the technical issues are satisfactory, we'll look at the engineering design, the layout, cross-sections, that sort of stuff. Once we're satisfied with that and our peer review consultants are satisfied with it, and there are no issues, it'll be brought back to a planning advisory committee meeting, and then we'll go to council.
Member Chambers?
The only difference here is that by asking for a bump up, now council has to approve the site plan.
Yes.
The other way, council did not have to approve the site plan. They would look at the site plan and concur with staff and then finalize it with the zoning bylaw. So we were going to hold back the zoning bylaw. Now we're holding back the site plan, which is accomplishing the same thing, but the difference being that now the site plan has to be approved by council by asking for the bump up.
Okay.
Member Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So should I add to be brought back to a planning meeting then? Does that need to be in the request? Or is it
No.
just an automatic thing that we do?
It's just process.
Okay,
We'll follow
thank
that
you.
process.
Thank you.
Any more questions or comments? Member Pierce.
Just a comment, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I started this conversation off like this.
No.
I totally understand that this is for rezoning, and I'm not against that, but I appreciate the discussion.
If there was, I appreciate what you brought up because these are going to be concerns down the road. So would everyone like the recommendation with the amendments read before I call the vote? Well, there's the request, but I want to be clear on this. Ms. Sick? Okay. Going to call the vote then. All those in favor? Opposed? This is carried. Thank you. Can we move on?
Please.
We have one more. It's C. Pine Vest Homes at 4 Balmoral Street, ZBA 3-18-DN. And I'll ask the planner to present. Boy, it's going to get lonely in here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. This application is proposing to place a holding provision on a portion of the subject lands located at 4 Balmoral Street to satisfy condition of consent application B12-18. The conditionally severed lands have an area of approximately 2,200 square meters, and the lands are to be added to the abutting lands to the northeast, which will provide the severed lands with the frontage along with the municipal right-of-way. The holding provision will ensure that development will occur in orderly manner and that the servicing, which is storm, water, and sanitary, they are available to service the proposed area in accordance with the policies of the official plan. No concerns were raised through the circulation of this application. Staff's recommending that the proposal be approved as it conforms to the provincial policy statement and the County of Brant official plan. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Any member of committee with a question of our planner? Member Powell.
Through you, Rashika, this area we've looked at before, and I think we had some complaints from residents about what looks like a black line. In other words, the back of their properties, and I think it had to do with trees, how much the people get, how much the developer gets. Now, I don't know whether that's all being settled, and did they put fences in or do anything before we go on further with the same area?
Sorry if I am understanding correctly. Are you referring to the trees and stuff along this?
The backyard of the ones that face Willow Street. We had a resident in the corner house, I think it is, that came and talked about his backyard, the slope, the trees, the fence, his backyard property, etc.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, through the circulation of this application, I have received no comments or concerns from anybody. I really am not aware of the concerns that were raised through any of the development applications on this property. Unfortunately, I do not have those details, but for these lands, there were no comments received.
Okay.
Member Pierce?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. So if I could here, so the lands to be, where eventually are they talking, like, is this going to be way down the road, an entrance into these is going to be off that little...
Laneway?
The lane? Okay.
Consolidated drive.
Okay, that's fine. So now in the, where the little apartment building is there, where they're building the new one there. So there's a new building that's being built in the back there.
Yes.
That, none of that is going to affect anything in here, because I don't see it in this drawing. And I just want to make sure that where that building is, because it's back quite a ways on that property. I just want to make sure that that's not going to interfere with any of this.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's correct. There's going to be no impact on the proposed or under construction apartment building here. These lands, if you recall, they were part of the Hampton Trails subdivision.
Yep.
And this was shown as maybe a lot or an entrance to this as a condominium development.
Right.
However, they have proposed to sever this so that a house can be constructed on these lands, and this block is going to be merged with the Tiger Cat lands and will be developed holistically with the remaining lands subject property.
Okay. Thank you.
Member Simons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is that Tiger Cat down in the right-hand corner, Rashika? Right at the bottom, right-hand corner?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Right next to industry.
See nothing? Is the applicant or the agent of the applicant would like to speak to this? Please come forward and state your name, sir.
Thank you, Chairman and committee. Bob Stewart from Pine Vest Homes, 11 Grand River Street North. Nothing really to add to the staff report. We are in support of the report itself. I can just touch on a few of those questions. There were some issues just with the drainage as it came across, and again, that's the first step really of addressing that, and what ultimately will be there is getting this holding symbol on there so we can revise the grading as needed. They'll come back for the lifting of the H, and then essentially a site plan and building permit for those lands. So it'll go through that public process again. We want to make sure we work with staff to make sure that grading's appropriate for those lands. And the other item, I think just Tiger Cat was to just adjacent to those properties, and that's where the land will go. Here for any other questions if you have them. Yeah.
Member Simons?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I might sound like a broken record, but it is all in our ward, so. The drive-in, the road, will it be a constructed 9-meter road? Or is it going to be the same as what it is now? And I don't think it's a 9-meter road.
So you're speaking of Consolidated Drive? Again, this is the first step ultimately to really get that lot developed and built on. That's why the H is going on the severed lands, as all that can then be discussed on how that's going to work with Tiger Cat's land for that laneway, for the service connections, for the grading. So that will come back at a later date through the lifting of the H as well as a full set of grading drawings.
So I guess I'm saying you're not too premature with taking away your entrance there?
No, we are fine with building that lot as we see fit. That's fine with us.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with a question of our applicant? See none? Thank you, Mr. Stewart.
Thank you.
Any member of the audience would like to comment on this application? I'll ask a second time. Is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? I'll ask a third time. Is there any member of the audience who would like to speak to this application? Seeing none, how does the committee wish to deal with the application? Member Coleman moves, seeking a seconder. I have one in Member Simons. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Moving on to consent items to be approved, there are none. Consent items to be received, there are none. I have a committee report. How does the committee wish to deal with it? Move to receive. Member Coleman, second by Member Pierce. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Staff reports, none listed. There's no communications listed. Other business, Member Eddy has an item. and you thought I forgot. You had an item. I put you on, sir.
Thank you very much. At council, which is not connected, I reported that I met with the executive director, the new executive director of Telford Place, who presented me with four sets of petitions against the class environmental assessment report for Grand River Street North, thinking that it was all complete. I discussed this with our CAO, who feels that the best next step in this matter, rather than proceeding to an open meeting, which Telford Place is prepared to host in their premises at no cost, is to point out that the process is a class environmental assessment, which is not complete. It's open as we go along the way. And that information should be circulated to the people who signed the petition, so they have an opportunity to read it and digest it, so to speak, before taking any other action. And you can refer it to the CAO if you wish at this time.
Any questions?
There is a lot of concern and about it.
It doesn't have to come through me. You can go directly to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I absolutely agree with the fact of getting the information out there. As we already heard tonight, lack of transparency, right? So anything we can do to get information out there, I'm all for it.
So important.
Member Simons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mary, I'd like to go one step further, and I have been to many meetings at the Telford Place. They have a lot of questions, they have a lot of concerns about everything in general, but in this one particular. I would suggest that staff be on board to answer questions that they have regarding the ES study, because there's a lot of things in there they don't understand. There's a lot of things that they would probably want to ask questions about, and I think they have the right to know. After all, they're going to be right smack in the middle of that, whatever it's going to be at that point. So they need to know where they're going to be and what they're going to be doing, because it's going to be a very, very, again, bad point. So I don't know whether that's appropriate, but maybe Mr.
I'm going to allow one more question, and then I'm going to comment. Member Eddie is just keeping us informed of what he has done. Member Chambers?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. I just, to be quite honest, I'm a little bit confused. Can somebody reconcile what we've done with the agreement at the OMB and what the people are asking for in terms of transparency? Is the feeling that they want to change what we've done, or that they want to know what we've done, or where are we? How do we, can somebody reconcile that when the staff comes up to comment?
Do you want to, Mr.
Member Eddie, I'm looking to you to answer that question.
Well, yes, there is
You brought
one
this
main opposition, and that's connecting a new road that goes to the east of Grand River Street North. And as you know, that could be, will be a main artery when it's built. And the majority seem opposed to connecting that to Silver Street.
Yeah.
But the problem is, no one has explained to them, in my opinion, why it was proposed to go that way. The advantages of doing it, that it won't take all the traffic out. It'll be for those people that need to go out to Grand River Street in that local area. So it's information that people need to have that they don't seem to have.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, and again, my confusion is the road pathways been determined by the agreement at the OMB? That's my question. Because if it has been part of the agreement, then can it be changed? If it's not part of the agreement, can it be changed? People want it changed, obviously. That's why they're upset. They don't like what has been proposed. But my question is, has that proposal been part of the agreement that we've entered into at the OMB?
I feel that our CAO is going to attempt an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so the answer is the proposed transportation solution for Grand River Street North has not been concluded yet. It is part of the environmental assessment process. It is a process. If the process was that long, we're somewhere over here with the end being here. So there's still lots of opportunity for people to engage. In terms of information, there's a huge amount of information available. I think our problem is we're not connecting the people well. We've had 2 public meetings already. There will be probably 2 or 3 more in the future. But we need to make a greater effort out there to connect people with the information. I think, and the last thing I would say is that there is some confusion that there was an OMB settlement. It's also added some additional layer of confusion to this situation. Some people feel that the road alignment has been decided through that settlement. That is not correct. We've been pointing that out to people as they approach us. So what I suggested to the mayor when he was talking today is we could send something over to Telfer Place, maybe a 2-page document explaining where the situation is and referring people to the information that's available and reminding them that there will be future public engagement processes that will be available for them to participate in fully. The EA, at the end of the day, it's the approval of that is not in our hands, it's in the Ministry of the Environment's hands, and we have to be able to show that we've gone through a process and that everyone's concerns that have been brought forward have been heard and attempted to be addressed. Not everyone's concern can be fully addressed, but we have to make an attempt to address them and to also show that we have engaged and listened to their concerns. So hopefully that answers the question, Mr. Chair.
Your question is to?
And I agree totally. The only thing I don't agree with is I think they need to have a question and answer period at their site. I think it's important that they are allowed to have that at Telfer Place because not many of them will go to a night meeting in the fairgrounds. And I think it's okay to have a report and say, okay, read it over. If you have any questions, call me. They won't do that. They won't do that. They would probably read it over and ask you what this means if you were there in person. That's what I'm getting at. I think it needs to be a little more addressed to on-site for these people.
Mr. Chair, through you if I could, and as part of the EA process, and we with past EAs, we've gone through all sorts of different ways to reach out to people. The last big one we did out at Bishopsgate Road, we ended up having neighborhood meetings with different groups of people who had different concerns. So all these will come in time, but they have to follow the right process. We have to get all of the input in, figure out where the buckets of concerns are, and respond to them accordingly. If that means we'll have to have a meeting at Telfer Place, staff will do that. If it means we have to have a meeting with another group of people who have a different set of concerns, we'll do that as well. So we can confirm that. But again, the process will follow its natural course. So
if I may, Mr. Chair, this will not happen in the near future, that's what you're saying. Will this happen at the conclusion of the EA?
through you, Mr. Chair, it'll happen eventually, and it might happen in a few weeks or a few months. Again, it depends on as the process moves forward. Exactly. So again, we will coordinate with the people as they bring petitions to us or comments to us. Then we will reach back out to them and determine how best to liaise with them. But so that's the process that we follow. So.
Thank you. Moving on, General Manager's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a few things I'd like to talk about. Our building permit activity, as everybody knows, there's a lot of construction going on. It's great to see the growth happening. The problem with the building permits coming in such volumes, we are in a delay. Normally we have 10 business days. We're getting closer to 20 business days and getting permits out. Part of it is staffing. Part of it is just the large volume that's coming in. To build on that a bit, we have a new building inspector who has started, Kate Janser. I know I'm going to pronounce that name wrong. She started about a week or two ago. We also have a plans examiner who's going to be dedicated to looking at Part 9 plans, which is the residential. That person's going to be starting the end of July. His name's Thomas Popolik, I think is how you pronounce it. The other thing I'd just like to talk about is building permit, the volumes that we've been getting. In our budgeting process for last year, we were expecting approximately $1.4 million in revenue for residential building permits. We've hit that so far this year. So we are going to be beyond that target. The actual true numbers are, we're at about 221 building permits, residential building permits. We're budgeting for, planning for 400. But when we actually did our budgeting process, we undervalued the construction value on that. So we're going to be exceeding the targets that we were expecting to hit in terms of revenue for building permits. So, and that's all I have.
Member Powell.
Or could you comment on the Rest Acres Road, north of Power Line, the sales offices on the west side? One is Live. We used to have a snow fence coming off Rest Acres because they were going to come in from Power Line Road. The snow fence is no longer there. And we have a second one further north that's now advertising new homes. It was a former house, but does that still make it, I shouldn't use the word legal, but appropriate to turn that into a home sales office, considering the traffic volume on Rest Acres Road?
I'd have to look into that. That's a separate parcel. So the parcel to the north, I think, is on I'm guessing, I think it might be not Arlington Meadows. Is it Arlington Meadows? Yeah. So I believe that's on a separate parcel. So they have, under subdivision agreement, they can construct a model home on that parcel. But when we are looking at that, they are going to need public works permits that'll look at access in and out of the building, radius, and that sort of thing. So I'm not certain where they're at in the process. I can certainly get some more information on where the approvals are on that and what's required and get back to you if you like.
Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mark. I've received several phone calls in regards to, and I brought it up before, in regards to the next stage of cobblestone and the number of construction trucks and everything that are using cobblestone and as a route to go in there. It was my understanding when this, I think it's phase 3, I believe, when it was starting, there was going to be a separate entrance made for them at the south end of where it is, right just about at Arlington there, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere in where Arlington Street is going to be. There was going to be a different entrance for the construction trucks to use, as opposed to going through down cobblestone, around by the school, and going in that way. As I say, we talked about, children's safety earlier. That was some of the things that were brought up. And the other thing that was brought up was the fact that just the dust that they're bringing up going through the existing survey in order to get back to where the new houses are, this next phase is going to be happening. Do you recall, is there anything being done as a separate entrance for them to come in?
Not that I know of. It's probably something that might be contained within the subdivision agreement itself. We'd have to dig through that to see what the requirements are for entrance and construction traffic. Certainly when new developments happen, construction routing and that sort of thing is considered. Without remembering the subdivision agreement or actually looking at it, we'd have to dig into that a bit.
Right. If you could do that and get something back to me, that'd be great. Because either that or, like I say, a new entrance there off of Rest Acres, or having them go back like to the further, I guess, we're in my directions here, further west, I guess it would be, to where the new ones are being built in behind there, and have them go around that way rather than going through the existing subdivision.
Sure, we can look at that for sure, yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
Anyone else with a question? Member Coleman.
Trying to delay this to 10:15, that Councilor Miller that we would make, wouldn't be out of here then, so I have to speak for the next 40, 30 minutes.
Awesome. Thanks.
So if you win this bet, I want to be clear, does that mean Miller's going to be buying everybody's coffee?
I'm not going to win it because I don't like being
Well, I can help you. If Miller's gonna be spending, I'll help you.
My concern is one of the, we had a resident come to the podium tonight and complained about transparency. And I don't know how we can be any more transparent than what we already are. And we're doing and sometimes it's a pain, the two-system cycle or whatever you want to do, you receive information and they come back in a month or 2 months or whatever. But if you heard Joe Cahoon here tonight, that one development in behind there on Dagwood or Dalewood Street, that's 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, it's not our fault that the resident just moved in here a year ago. So I don't know how we can be any more transparent than what we are. Do we have to put bigger signs up, or what? And it's not, and you later, Mr. Crowder later on the point that we held off on these here until we were kind of done with the Paris ones to the point that these three had to come forward. But they were not approved tonight.
No, they weren't.
And I don't know how we can be any more plainer to the public than what we are. They don't, you're right, Mr. Mayor. A lot of them don't understand and don't want to understand. And don't want things in their own backyard. It's all right for some people. So it bothers me that maybe we don't always handle it right, but I think that, we are very transparent on what we're doing.
If I
Never
may.
got where it's gonna help you extend this meeting.
Sorry, may I?
Nobody does it better
Just
than.
knock 5 minutes off, so.
And
Sorry.
thank you. If I might add, the lady the resident who suggested that we weren't transparent, I spoke to her during the recess, and I think that her issue was that there was people in the audience that got notice about one application, and then they got here tonight and found out about the other two. And I think she was one of those people. And she said, why aren't they all? I said, well, we can't. I told her we can't meld them together. They're separate applications, there's separate property owners, and there's a planning process we must follow. So I suggested if she wants to follow them, put her name down on all 3 sign-up sheets so she'll know when the next meeting is. But I gave her Dan Dignard's name because he's the separate school trustee for that area, because she seemed to have a lot of issues with the school board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Member Eddie, you wanted to speak?
No.
Oh, well, I heard you talking, so I thought
Sorry.
that.
May I respond?
Yes,
I can stretch
of
this out
course,
for Councilor
absolutely.
Coleman a little bit.
You gotta fill off another 10 minutes yet.
Yeah, and I was going to say, we're obligated to generate mailing lists under the Planning Act. We went through a process before, I think, where we assessed different options. Most municipalities go through the same process because, people who are 130 meters away don't get a notice, people who are 150 don't, and they always want to see it expanded and extended. I'd say that I would actually probably say that what planning staff did tonight is a good example of trying to bring all that information together at the same time. So where we may have missed specific circulations on one subdivision may have been missed, by having them all here tonight, everybody's aware of it all. So I think that actually grouping them together as planning staff did and the effort they put into that is a good way of actually promoting awareness and being a little bit more, not transparent, but at least trying to expand the awareness of this and circulation, the information that we're getting in.
Any other questions for our general manager? Seeing none, thank you, Mark.
Sorry.
You didn't tell everybody that the OMB appeal in St. George starts tomorrow.
I think Rob may have, I think it was mentioned during the presentations.
Yeah, okay.
I think
Thank
Rashika
you.
may have mentioned it, yeah.
There's no in-camera listed. Next meeting will be Tuesday, August 7th, right here at 7 o'clock. This meeting is adjourned. I apologize for keeping you so long this evening, folks.